everyone, to today's conversation on Well, That Helps. And we're really looking forward to introducing our two guests, Megan and Cody, and also having them share a little bit about their organization, TULA, and diving into, how the genesis of the organization worked and everything. Megan, it looks like you got the video to work. We're good.
Yeah. Of course, it went out right.
Love technology, right? It's one of those things that happens for sure. Well, I guess where I'd love to start is, Megan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background, and then a little bit about TULA.
Sure. Hi, I'm Megan Trask. I'm the co-founder of TULA Life Balanced. I spent about 22 years in the oil and gas industry, and obviously that's an incredible industry to be a part of, but also a grind. And really kind of what led me to creating TULA, honestly, was just trying to find a better balance between kind of career and caring for my girls. I was a single mom of two girls when TULA kind of came to be, and trying to prioritize my time with more purpose and have more time with them, be more intentional and present was a huge foundation for, where TULA really kind of started to root from, and realizing that everybody needs a little more time in their days. It's certainly not something anyone would turn away. So luckily, my best friend of a million years, Cody, and I started talking about TULA on some walks, and just COVID happened, which you would think would be a horrible thing for a business, but it gave Cody some more time, and she offered to help get TULA off the ground, and thank goodness she did. And I took her up on that offer immediately. So we have been doing this now for about 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, and so how did you guys meet originally? Best friends of a million years.
Yeah. We actually met at my second real grown-up job at an oil and gas company here in Denver. And Cody was working there in the summer. And we were the only two people, well, maybe one other person under the age of 60, I think. So we quickly were drawn to each other and started hanging out, and haven't really stopped since. So lucky moment for sure for me, I think. I hope for Cody too.
She also introduced me to my husband. So we started we're best friends and at work, and introduced us. And I knew oil and gas was not my path. So I was just there temporarily, but I got the best friend and the husband out of it. So it was.
That's a deal.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Cody, shifting gears just a bit, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So yeah, oil and gas was very temporary. I quickly got into the event world. So spent probably 12 years of my career in nonprofit. So doing, foundation support, fundraising support for a number of local nonprofits here in Denver before starting my own event company with a couple of partners. And we were doing great. And then COVID happened. So we were probably 2 years into our business when COVID hit. And it was, a terrible shift, pivot in all the ways. But it was also very serendipitous that Megan was making this transition, and I had a lot more time on my hands to start thinking about things. And the event world, while awesome, was also a bit cumbersome in terms of I had two little ones and was trying to navigate the travel that events involve, and weekends and event and nights and all the things. And so I thought her idea was brilliant. And the more we started talking about it, the more I got, a fire in me for it. And so that's TULA.
Very cool. Well, So taking from that perspective, can you guys tell us a little bit about the nugget that started the concept for TULA, and maybe walk us through how it has evolved to kind of its present, present moment?
Sure. Well, we can kind of tag team this one. I think the way you put it, Cody, of where it kind of became a fire for you, there's probably a really amazing story behind that. Well, I know there is, but for me, kind of the idea piece was just that I was very sick of rushing out of work at 6, but still feeling like a slacker, but feeling like the worst mom to pick up my kids almost late from daycare every day. And knowing that I still had a whole shift of work at home and from my office job as well, waiting for me once I got home. So I was feeling like I was rushing the girls to bed so I could work longer, and that just didn't align. I didn't really realize that it didn't align until it was like such a burnout moment that I was very unhappy and like physically feeling very stressed and sick from putting that grind on for so long. And not to say anything against men in oil and gas, but they just didn't really understand that piece of what I was trying to balance. And so getting a lot of pats on the back about, we don't know how you do this all. Like finally the last one, which they thought was a compliment, was kind of my breaking point of like, I don't either, and I'm actually not. So there has to be a better way. So I think, the why is super selfish. Obviously it translates to so many people and so many stories, but it was really kind of, I have to fix something in my life, or I'm not sure how long I can do this in a good, well, I wasn't in a good mental health space, but I didn't know how much longer I had to even fake it. So.
I would love to know how many woman-owned small businesses start with what men consider compliments, because that's kind of where ours came from too. Where it's like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Bye.
Totally.
You don't know.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're exactly right. And I think honestly, the most impactful businesses, or certainly this is what Cody and I hope, come from a personal need that you can experience and translate so personally into the experience that you would put out in the world too. I think that is where Cody and I partnering can really be empathetic and understanding of what our clients' needs are, because they were 100% our needs as well, and trying to address those in an efficient and thoughtful way is really kind of where we've always put our first lens on, if you will. But could not do it without Cody and everything that she brings to the table, which is mostly being much nicer than me.
No. And similarly, I was just, when she started talking to me about it, I was like, you're just so in it, and you're just I'm saying yes to everything because it's we're trying to grow our business. And then I have these little ones, I'm trying to do everything with them. And I'm just this is normal, right? Everybody's doing this, everybody's trying to do everything. And everybody look our friends, you just always compare yourself to others, and you're everybody's crushing it. Everybody's organized. Everybody's doing all the things with their kids and managing a successful career. And I was this is just what we do, right? Exhausted. And I think it was talking to Megs on those walks where I really was had a second to breathe, where I was just oh, yeah, this is crazy, and it's not healthy, and I am burnt out, and I'll be the first to admit the concept of asking for help. I'm still working on it myself, and I think it is such a behavior change that I recognize the need for it in my own life very quickly. Not to say I'm good at it still, but
Good practicing.
Yeah. Really, work in progress.
Yeah,
exactly. I love that it started with conversations on walks, because I think a lot of times walking, Whitney and I, we started our organization doing a very long walk in Patagonia, having those very real conversations out there, being what the heck are we doing? Does this make sense? How do we want to shift? How do we want to adjust? So I love that walking conversations lead to new organizations. Okay, so you guys both identified areas that were friction points with this second shift. Mm-hmm. How did the genesis go from the concept that this is an area you guys wanted to focus in on into how to create a business to solve that or focus on that?
Sure. I think Cody kind of is a perfect segue into this, of how it's really hard to ask for help. So when we were kind of laying the groundwork for how we thought this would make the most sense and have the most impact, was how do we make it easy to ask for help? How do we make people feel more empowered to ask for help and less guilty? Because there's so much guilt that comes with that, whether it's mom guilt or just normal guilt. So that was really, we wanted it to be very efficient and leverage technology so that it almost detached just a little bit, so people didn't feel guilty about asking a specific person for help, if that makes sense. I'm going to throw it out into the world. If somebody wants to help me, amazing, perfect match. Thank you, universe. So that's really where we kind of started with that in mind, right? How do we make it easy, and how do we empower people? And then also, very important, focusing on the community and and the feel of safety and trust and all the things that come with trusting other people to do some of the most important things on your list, even if they're the things you don't want to do or you can't get to. They're important in navigating the week or navigating caring for your family or however that looks. So we were really focused on trying to find just the right balance between technology and community and trust and all those things and bringing it together so that it wouldn't feel like just a one-off, oh, I might ask these people for help one time. And that I think was the right kind of lens to put on, even if we struggle a little bit with how to do that perfectly or what the worries would be on our side or client side, because we've had clients with us since the beginning. And, we feel like that helps us to feel confident in those days when you're running your own business and you don't feel confident that something is right because somebody really does rely on having TULA in their life. So Codes, you could totally add to that too.
Yeah, no, I think that's where we started, and we were lucky enough to have a longtime friend that was a developer that was willing to kind of brainstorm how we actually do that. We are not tech people, so we were very excited to learn terms like stack and we were like, oh, okay, they're like, you're in the technology business, and we were like, huh, like what?
Yeah.
That's not initially what we thought we were growing, but very lucky to have them on board for the first part to help build our MVP and teach us a whole lot about things we had no idea about on the app side and technology side. And we did that pretty quickly because everybody kind of had a little more time because it was 2020 and things were on pause. And so it was like a very concentrated brainstorm sesh for a couple months where we kind of hashed out how it would actually work.
Yeah, that's great. I was about to ask who the nerd on the team was, who was bringing the technology to the table. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one interesting thing that so often we hear people talk about having business ideas and thinking about bringing in partners and doing those types of arrangements. But I'm sure, as you guys know, it's a give and take. So talk with us a little bit about some of the kind of, strong suits and what each of you brings to the table individually and kind of how that shows up in the business.
You want me to go, Meg? Okay. Yeah, it was really interesting because we have been best friends forever, but we didn't actually know each other on a work level, in a work capacity, really, because we were kind of in passing when we worked together very briefly. And so it was super fun and also very interesting. I would say Megan is incredibly good in spreadsheets and analytics and a big picture, has a vision for growth and scaling, and is incredibly wise, business savvy, and has a lot of experience managing big teams. So all of that has been incredibly helpful in building TULA. And I feel like I'd be curious to hear what Meg says, but I would say I'm more in the day-to-day feeling, relations with our team type of person. I think the event world also has lend itself nicely to this because it is project management times 1,000. And so that translates really well into what we're building at TULA too.
I'd love to add on to that because Codes didn't quite do herself justice, but Codes also has the highest EQ of any human I've ever met in the entire world. And so she's really good at bringing that lens of big picture where I might get a little rabbit hole tunnel vision about something that didn't align with our plan or, what our processes are, whatever. And Cody's really good at being more flexible and looking for solutions, that are, maybe they don't fit on a spreadsheet. Maybe they're not black and white, that lands with a nerd like me, but they are the right answers. And they're the answers that are best for the client or our assistant or whoever is a part of that scenario. So absolutely could not do it without somebody kind of bringing that empathy and compassion to the equation, because at the end of the day, it's a business, but it's a business based on supporting and helping people. And if you don't have that side, it doesn't matter how great your spreadsheets are, whatever your your plan is. Like, it's not going to come together if you're not serving your community, both clients and assistants. So Codes is amazing at that.
Very cool. It sounds like a great combination. So when you all were building out the team, see what I corrected?
Working on it.
When you built out the team, what was your go-to next person? So what other skills did you need to bring in or backgrounds to add to the team as you built?
I mean, really, Codes and I are still the main hamsters on the wheel, I would say, but we've had other people help us out in different phases of the company when we were like maybe in super fast growth, or we were trying to get over that next hurdle for growth. So, I think it's where we would look next is probably like a marketing minded person that could take that. Codes does our social right now, and she is phenomenal at it, but somebody that could like take that into several arenas, if you will, or kind of figure out how to layer things. And not that Cody can't, there's just not enough hours in the day. We need TULA for TULA. So that's next. That's the skill set that I think would be really helpful to add next if we were ready or wanting to do that right now. But yeah, and we've also had some amazing assistants that we can hand off some of the more like day-to-day business items that allow Cody and I to focus on things that maybe have a little higher like value or potential outcome. And so we have just the coolest team that's always willing to step in and help out with those things kind of on an as needed basis. So
very nice.
That's great. Oh, I have a question. Can I jump in?
Yeah, jump in. Wait.
Okay, I'm going to intersect that. One thing that we see a lot is, and Kaylee and I are super guilty of it, is the getting ready to get ready piece of entrepreneurship. How did y'all know when you were ready? Talk to us a little bit about kind of like how you went to market, and then like those moments when you got to market and you were like, well, shit, that doesn't work. Or yeah, that's working great. We didn't see that. So kind of that journey, I would say.
Yeah.
I really wish we had an amazing answer for you on that. And this is advice I would give to somebody considering, like, there's no right time. There's no way to perfectly enter a market or perfectly plan to enter a market. Where Cody and I were probably actually hard on ourselves for not knowing exactly how to do that. But the reality is, even if we thought we had a plan or an idea, it would have changed course at some point anyway. So I think the getting ready to get ready, like planning is so important. Thinking about big picture, thinking down the line is so important. But the reality is also that it just doesn't match with a perfect time to do that and like that groundwork. So we didn't necessarily have that. I think also because I had spent so much time in corporate, very much like following other people's directions, I had a lot of anxiety and, not to have a cheesy buzzword, but imposter syndrome beyond belief, like in a way I couldn't even imagine. I didn't know what it was until I was in the space, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's so it. So needed some of those nudges. Codes was great at nudging. My husband is amazing at nudging and like kind of encouraging just moving forward. Moving forward is more important than moving forward perfectly. So if we had any plan, or if I had any thought of a plan, that's what I would say in hindsight it maybe was, although I didn't know it at the moment.
Yeah, it was almost like a blessing that we didn't know what we were doing, because we were kind of like blinded by like, we're like, I guess this is it. We're launching, and it's so fun. We did the brainstorm session, we built the MVP, and then we launched to our like friends and family in October after doing a beta, kind of wanted to test what people would be asking and see if it actually was a need within our like smaller networks. And then when we launched in December of 2020, so we started talking in like June of 2020. So it was a pretty quick ramp up between like building the MVP, deciding how it was going to work, and then launching to the world. And Megs and I love to relive our launch day, because it was one of those times where you just like thought you're going to turn it on and there was going to be like hundreds of requests come in at any given, and we just were just sitting there like on her kitchen counter, just like waiting. We had champagne, like we were like so excited, and that enthusiasm luckily carried on. But that first day was a little eye-opening, I guess. We were like, oh, okay, this isn't going to be quite as like quick as we anticipated. But yeah.
Well, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're good.
Oh, I was going to say, so when you guys did your launch and it was maybe not like the confetti and champagne launch that you maybe were envisioning, while still exciting, probably not at that level. What was kind of the learning that you, or the moves you had to make in order to kind of nudge, the people to start, working and using and signing up with TULA? How did you guys kind of get the message out on that?
Do you want to go in?
I can, sure. I think the first learning was that we needed to be more patient, and that will be something that I would mention we learn over and over again. Even if we thought we learned it one time, you never learn it enough when you're starting your own business and continuing to grow it. I do think, and Codes also brings optimism at every moment. And so she was really helpful in kind of continuing that momentum. But honestly, we kind of went back to our core beta group and asked them to continue to put in requests, to offer hours to other people in our network, just to kind of get, at a minimum, we tried to shift our focus to be like, at least we can learn more by giving more hours away, or by continuing kind of more the beta process longer than we had intended. And I think that was a good reframe, rather than feeling like it wasn't working, it didn't work, or whatever. And then it was so funny. We also remember the day that the first person signed up that was not related to us or wasn't one of our friends, like calling each other so excited. And it just kind of started to snowball a bit from there. I mean, not saying it was a huge snowball, but enough that people started talking. And for a really scrappy startup with no budget, that's the best kind of marketing, is having people relive their experience with TULA or share how it felt. So we were scrambling in all the ways, posting all the time, just trying to do whatever we could to get the word out as well. But it really kind of took a little bit of a life on its own. Once it probably was about a month or 6 weeks of being patient, more patience than we wanted to bring to the table. But
well, and that kind of sparks two questions on my part. The first one being when kind of the momentum started to happen, where are most of your clients coming from? Has it changed over time?
It's changed a little bit as we've grown and entered new markets, but I would say like our initial Denver market, which is where we launched, Denver, Boulder, it really has been primarily word of mouth, which is crazy, but it also speaks to the trust factor that Meg's touched on, where this is such a personal business. And that was one of our learnings, is that it also requires people to kind of like change a behavior and allow people into their home, or provide them with personal information to, those kind of things. And so I think that we have learned over time, it just takes longer to acquire clients that are willing to ask for help and rip the Band-Aid off. But yeah, mostly word of mouth. We were lucky enough to get a few pieces like in the Wash Park Profile and some of these like very local neighborhood newspapers, which we got a few clients from those, and 5280 and Denver Post. So those obviously helped a little bit as well. But yeah, it's still primarily word of mouth, whether that's from clients or our team of assistants. That's great.
The next one I wanted to touch on is, you said on a budget. Let's talk funding. Did you guys bootstrap? Because that's one of the main barriers we see, is people have the concept and then they think they have to go raise money, but there's no proof of concept. And then, you see a lot of giving huge portions of your company away and ownership and things like that. How did you two navigate the financing the startup piece?
That is like, it triggers a little bit of trauma response.
I think that's normal.
Yeah.
Totally.
Be really transparent in that. So the short answer is Codes and I have bootstrapped it. We had a really, really tiny friends and family round that kind of gave us a little bit of a runway in that first year. But we then decided to go out and raise. And I was doing that. Like, we had an advisor that suggested one person do the raise and one person stay really in the business day to day. So I was doing the raise. Codes was like just grinding on the business every day. And man, is that a humbling experience to go through that process. And I think we didn't end up taking on any funding. We got to like second and third calls on several occasions, but didn't move beyond that. And it felt really defeating. And I felt like I had failed Cody and our company, and the whole thing just felt like really hard. It was not the best period of TULA for me, I wouldn't say. But then we had a long conversation about how maybe it just makes sense to have more patience and have it just really be Codes in mind for the long term, rather than feeling really frustrated. Like, we would have conversations where we already had revenue, we were already showing profit within like a couple of months, we had really great numbers. And so people who invested in early seed said we were too far along. People who invested in seed rounds thought we weren't far along enough. And we just kind of like, it felt really frustrating to feel like, did we mess up? Should we have had these conversations before we even created anything? It was really hard to just feel like a lot of questioning yourself and a lot of maybe missteps had happened. So once we had that conversation and decided that we would just be patient, I think it's brought a lot of relief personally for me in feeling like we can do that. And I think it's also helped Codes and I, just like Codes was already, but like refocus on what is important about TULA and not having the prettiest pitch deck or the best graphs, which I can hide in numbers. I can hide in those things all the time, and I don't mind doing it, but it was not what the purpose of TULA was. So anyway, that's a really long answer. I think it's also easy to think you have to, right? Like, it's this culture of every podcast you listen to about entrepreneurship or how people built their companies, like, you're hearing, it makes it sound like they got $1 million by walking into an office and then they had their IPO 3 years later. And that's just not the reality. So kind of having that reality of one, that isn't reality, and not comparing ourselves to those other stories, because that wasn't our story anyway, really helped. And I think solidified that obviously the direction that we wanted to go, but also that it didn't feel like at any point we regretted starting it because we didn't have funding, because we didn't have the splashy first round or any of those kinds of things along the way. But it's a phase of every business. And I think you always hear more stories about taking on funding than not. And I would just say in hindsight that considering the not taking on funding is probably something that deserves more consideration than a lot of people get when they start up. That was a long answer, sorry. It was a really long process.
Yeah, I'm so glad you say that though, because I feel like you're right. Like there's so much noise in the marketplace about, like those amazing like fundraising capacity, and it makes you question, is there another route? And I love to hear that you guys were able to, explore a different route. How has having that conversation, how has that maybe shifted your perspective on growth and what you prioritize for TULA?
Do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I think it's changed a lot because when we were living in the numbers, and Meg's much more so than me, it's easy to lose sight of like why you're doing what you're doing, and like client retention and client experience, because you're like so focused on like, but if they pause, our numbers are going to go down for like this month and we need to show. So it was just like, it's easy to lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing, and also like delivering the service that you want to deliver, and have the experience, reflect the business you want to create. And so I think it's definitely allowed us to just refocus on, client experience and get back to like our team and spending energy and resources on building and retaining our team. And
How many times did y'all shift your pricing structure as you've grown? Have you shifted, or is it pretty consistent with what you started with?
It's pretty consistent, honestly. And I will say we spent a ton of time at the kitchen counter kind of throwing out different ideas and how how we could simplify it in a way that, again, made it really easy. And we've, had price adjustments. We've had 2 in the 4 years that we've been in business. But we haven't shifted the way that we do it, other than like some bulk hour packages, or realizing, oh gosh, if we're in Aspen, which we are in Aspen, we have to pay people a lot more to be the assistant. So that just looks like a different level of pricing, but it's still the same structure of either doing it subscription or having a la carte hours. So we were really focused on making it feel more like people were just choosing what the value of their hour was, not the value of a task. And so keeping structure this way has been important to us, because it simplifies, whether I'm having a chef come in and prep meals, or I'm having somebody do my laundry or run my returns back to Target. Like, it's still just the value of my hour in that kind of equation. And so that's really always been super important to us. I feel like people really have not really questioned that very much either. And gosh, when you're first starting, you're sure everyone's going to hate your pricing. They're going to hate how you do everything, and you're going to have to shift all the time. So I feel like that's one area that we probably were headed down the right path on early on, and would remain with TULA for as long as we have TULA, which is hopefully a long time.
So so you guys have been really focused heavily on like the client experience and maintaining that. What has been your approach to make sure that the new individuals you bring into the team that are going to be delivering the client services, how do you get them prepared to kind of meet the expectation that you guys hold with your clients?
Well, I would say let's take it back even a step further. What are you looking for? How are you deciding who's a good fit and finding those people before you prepare them?
Yeah,
Great.
That's a great question. We've been super humbled by the caliber of people that want to be personal assistants. I think that was a big unknown. We were like, we have this great concept. We want to help people. Is there going to be anybody to help that can do it in the way that we want to deliver the service? And it's been really amazing and eye-opening to see the people we really haven't had an issue recruiting people that are way overqualified to be an assistant. And I think that the biggest qualifier is a genuine desire to help people, because if they don't have that, it's not a match. And so we've gotten pretty good at figuring that out from the jump. Like, we do have obviously, a pretty strong onboarding process with training and onboarding calls. But before that, it's checking references. It's like actually doing the back work on asking them why they're interested in being a part of TULA. And of course, we have students or people that are kind of in a flux period in their life, but they all have the common denominator that they genuinely want to help people. And that is and has always been the biggest thing that we look for in assistants.
Yeah, I would just add to that too. We've been really lucky that our assistant community refers other assistants, which that's the best type of person, right? Because they know exactly what they're getting into. We've had clients that they think of a friend whose kiddo's home from college for the summer, or somebody that they know that's in between jobs, send people our way. So those are obviously the ones that feel like the least amount of worry, because of course you still worry and want everything to go well. We've evolved our process a little bit too, and kind of being more thoughtful about, we give situational kind of test questions as we onboard people. We do the background checks. We have multiple calls to kind of continue to gauge throughout the process. Are they still a fit? Obviously, it's a bummer if you get to the end and they're not a fit. But like Cody said, we have really high quality candidates and people who are excited to do that, and that doesn't happen. I think also for us, realizing the community of assistants and like how powerful that is in our concept and how important it is in our concept was something that maybe we had taken more lightly than we should have as well. And just seeing the way that people, not just clients, love this concept, but assistants love this concept. A lot of our assistants are moms who can fit this in between drop off and pickup, which is a struggle to find a job that has that much flexibility, even in a post-COVID world. Like those jobs are not as common as they used to be. And so we feel really like honored in being able to provide those types of opportunities for people to do something that is really gratifying. They get thanked, unlike they might not get thanked at home for doing the same things that they're doing for our clients. And they can fit it into their schedule and their lives. So it feels like that our mission to support clients has also like translated in our mission to support assistants and community in that way too.
I love that. And when you're evaluating going into a new market, you mentioned Aspen. Are you typically looking for the assistance first and kind of feeling out, do we have the personnel to make sense in this market? Or are you going the other direction and saying, hey, we're going to go here. We're going to do what we can to find folks, in this market?
That's a great question. And I would say we've kind of experimented with that in markets, doing it a different way. So Austin was our first expansion out of Denver and Boulder. And Cody and I did that from here. And our focus was on building an assistant team first. And it was okay, but we didn't have anybody who was really rooted in the community as a leader of that group, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we quickly realized that whenever markets we go into, that's a really important role, to have somebody who understands the community, the logistics, the culture, everything that goes along with that. So that was a learning, but we did find somebody. Didn't take too long to find somebody to do that, but it was an eye opener of like, oh gosh, when these requests are coming in and Cody and I are putting them out to our team, we have no idea how far apart some of these things are or what these actually mean. So our additional markets, we're about to launch our 7th market, have really been more driven by people coming to us. And hey, I was thinking about doing this in my city, but as I was Googling, I found TULA. Would you be interested in bringing TULA to Raleigh, which is now our 2nd biggest market? And so that's been really cool, because you start off with a little bit of a leg up and knowing somebody is really excited about doing it and came to us with the idea. So that's how we continue to move forward into other markets is we have a long list of markets we'd love to get to, but we're prioritizing them more by where the demand is coming to us first. And as a part of being our market partner, they're our first assistants too. So we're not overthinking and overcomplicating it by building a big team right out of the gates either. And we think it's really important for those partners to be the first assistants, like Cody and I were, and sometimes still are, to understand the real relationship and workflow that occurs between getting a request and completing it in a great way. So that's how we've evolved what our market kind of expansion looks like. We're excited about being at this number. I think we set a goal of 8 to 10 by the end of this year. We may be at 8. We have another market in the mix. So we'll feel really good about that and feel like we've done it in a little more thoughtful way than Austin started.
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. So talking about, it sounds like one of the things that you guys are getting really good at over the progression of the organization is really listening. How do you guys have formal processes to listen to your customers or to your team members or the market? And how do you guys tap that kind of knowledge?
Yeah, I think that is definitely an area that we see spending some energy and time on in the future to get better at. It's certainly an area that I would say I would like to prioritize it in, improving. On the assistant side, we try to hold things in person, whether that's, we call them hacks and snacks, where we kind of do an extension of some training that could be helpful, like some basic handyman skills or basic organizing how-tos, or we did one on leveraging AI and how to use that for client requests. And so on the assistant side, I think we do an okay job at it. We're certainly working on getting better and bringing people together a little bit more. We also send out biweekly emails and ask for feedback all the time as well from our team. And then on the client side, just like an app feature down the road that we have had on our list for a long time, but haven't quite pulled the trigger on, is a kind of client feedback on tasks, so they can kind of rate the task once it's completed. And then we have sent out surveys as well. Megs, what am I missing on that side?
I mean, I think, and this is probably not the greatest answer, but we're just really responsive too. Obviously, you want to be proactive and listening and gathering that feedback and making decisions for the future. But we really do care about any feedback we get from a client, good, bad, or otherwise, and dive in on those things quickly, to the point of like changing our technology to make to make client experience easier, to make assistant experience easier. So we do listen. I don't know that we're the best at like pulling that feedback out, but there's no way we can continue doing this without incorporating all of those layers of feedback to make it the best case for both sides, and really valuing both sides. Like we added an assistant dashboard when we launched our app, and that has made their lives so much easier, and ours in the long run too. But just looking at ways to make this as easy as possible, because like Cody said, the behavior shift is so hard. We need to make all the other pieces as easy as possible.
Super simple and easy.
Yeah.
Well, so as you guys, I know we've talked a little bit about expanding into different markets, but also you guys have expanded the ways that people can use the hour, right? So from like the chef help to kind of helping them understand, helping your clients understand different ways to tap the resource of TULA. Can you tell us a little bit about that progression and what you guys do offer in that hour of support that they get?
Yeah, I think, that was definitely a learning, is like people knew they needed help, but they weren't sure like how to go about doing that, or they had like, one errand request, but they were like, but this is going to take 10 minutes. Like, I don't want to use it. Like, there was some things that we had to work through. And I think that one of those was seeing that people were using us for like household resets, like unloading dishwasher, taking out the trash, but they were like putting that all in as one request. And so we quickly adapted and we have something called TULA time, where they don't necessarily have to list all those things out. They can just put TULA time and when they want that service. And we match them with an assistant that will come and kind of take care of those things that'll just help them feel better when they get home from work, whether it's like taking out the recycling, doing the dishwasher, a couple loads of laundry, making the bed. So kind of like resetting the living room. And that kind of took the guesswork out, I guess, of like having to list everything out or think about what they want done. What else, Megs?
Yeah, we also implemented, like, we always did a client onboarding, but we definitely pushed that a little bit more, so that, and Codes does these calls and she's amazing at really planting those seeds of what would be important, kind of teasing out what is hard in their week and then matching to, of course we do that, or, kind of steering them in a way that could feel like it gets the wheels turning. And honestly, people generally just need to make one or two requests, and then it's like the Band-Aid is ripped off, and then they're off the races. It's like, wow, find missing socks, or throw away the socks that will never have a match. Things that maybe don't seem like someone would put them in the app, but then when you get them, it's like, oh man, I want somebody to do that too. It's been really cool just to see what people want and learn from them, and then adapt our services. I will say we didn't necessarily plan on TULA Kitchen, which is our meal prep service initially, but when we did our beta and our survey with all of our friends and the beta participants, 98% of people came back saying that would be the biggest help in their week. And so we did adapt from there, and that was a quick pivot and maybe something we hadn't necessarily thought up to that point. I don't know, but and now it's one of our most used offerings. So it's keeping stock of what people are wanting in their lists, and kind of trying to nudge them beyond that and make them feel comfortable rather than guilty or embarrassed. But
very cool. Yeah, it's interesting to think that, like, as you guys progress, or as you all progress in this process, you're going to find so many cool ways to support individuals that maybe you didn't even think about, like having the meal service. Like, I can tell you that's definitely something that's intriguing for me, for sure. To not have to do meal prep, amazing. Absolutely amazing concepts. Well, I think we're coming close up on our time. So
I have a couple more. I think we're good until the quarter hour, if that's all right.
That's great.
Yeah, a few more minutes. Well, with that being said, you had mentioned expansion, etc. So what kind of exciting developments can we expect, in the near term in addition to that for TULA?
Oh gosh, Codes help me out, but the expansion for sure is on our radar in a big way. Another way that we think TULA really makes sense is as a benefit for companies, so that we
that's
realize,
what I was thinking.
Yeah, we realize TULA is maybe not accessible for everybody, although we try really hard to make it as accessible as possible. But having a company that really cares about giving their clients or their employees work-life balance, not just like putting it on your HR sheet of all the perks of the company, and subsidizing those hours, or being able to kind of like they subsidize a really big discount to the hours so that it does give their employees the opportunity to shift that second shift a little bit more onto somebody else's plate and less on theirs. We've done tons of research on, loyalty and especially women leaving the workforce, because the intersection of care and career is insanely difficult to juggle. And so that's definitely a passion of ours, and trying to figure out how to make that work well, so that, obviously it grows our business, but it has the most impact if we're able to do that, like through organizations, and shift their culture too, right? Of like feeling like asking for help, whether at home or work, is something that is okay to do. And maybe that makes things more collaborative in the office as well as at home. So that I think is probably our biggest initiative and what we're most excited about. It's also something that is sometimes feel like we're pushing a really big stone up a hill, but we'll get there. And I think it's just like Cody said, that behavior shift and mindset shift of what it really means is hard to change. So we're being patient, but I think that absolutely has a huge use case for TULA. And we're always looking at tech evolving as well. We have the best developer who's so sweet and responds to us in our non-tech lingo and like tries to translate what that would mean in the real world for us. So bless his heart. And so we're just always looking at ways to make it better and easier.
Great. Well, and let us know when you get ready for the employer side, because this is something that Kaylee and I have talked about for years as being a benefit that would be wonderful. So let me plant the seed that we are absolutely happy to help.
Love it.
When you're there.
Thank you.
Kind of final, well, I think I can squeak in two more. What gaps do you see out there for info in terms of starting a business for women that you would love to see, development in terms of information, resources, things like that? What did you find useful, and kind of, what would you like to see?
Interesting question. So one thing that I found frustrating, and this kind of tails back to the fundraising era, there's all these stories about how men have done it. And there's all these stories about how women receive such a small percentage of funding, like 3% or something like that. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm really sick of seeing the stat. I want to know how the 3%, like how that worked for them, and how other women can share their stories so that it feels, less intimidating. Because if all you listen to is stories of people that had incredible luck or a huge amount of family money, like that's really defeating before you even start. So I think, and this may exist too, but having a community where people are a little bit more real about their experiences, especially women, and how it happened, and also how it impacted their family. I think it's difficult sometimes to think about starting and doing a startup, which takes a tremendous amount of work when you have a family. That's like hard to juggle too. So just maybe a better sense of community around female founders and female business owners to share their experiences, and to sort of be that community for each other, of event sessions or validation or whatever it might look like. I will say also another resource that was really amazing and continues to be is I listen to the How I Built This podcast, Cody and I both do often, and it's been so inspiring, even though sometimes it led us to the not healthy comparisons. It's been really helpful, and having those types of stories, but maybe with more female founders too, just to share the journey of a different perspective, a little bit more so than we see. But in any event, that's been a huge resource that has kept us going in some moments, or made us think of like something else shiny to look at. So
that's great.
Anything else on that?
No, I would add that Tara, which I know you guys are a part of as well. We obviously, they opened after we were pretty deep into it, but had that been open and we had known about it when we were in our kind of development stage, pre-launch, and even that first year, I feel like that would have been so incredibly helpful because those conversations that we have had with other female founders there and entrepreneurs has been just validating, and also, like to Meg's point, real, and lets you know you're not alone in the in the waves that you're riding with entrepreneurship. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's ultimately part of the reason Kaylee and I wanted to start having these conversations, is because we just talk to each other about all of the business shit that we consume on a regular basis. And by the time you exchange 14 podcasts a week, you can't tell if you're starting or ending your business. And it's just this constant imposter optimism, high, low, lows thing. So we so appreciate the time and the insights. And it's so funny to talk about how much women learn from each other's experiences. I have 3 nuggets already written down of, hey, Kaylee, did you hear that? That's what we were just talking about.
Exactly.
So we really, really appreciate it, and hope all the best as you all grow and expand, and are excited to watch it.
Thank you so much. I think what's really cool about the space too is that women really champion each other more so than maybe other communities. So we've been really fortunate to meet amazing women like you or Kate at Tara, and just people that can kind of keep you going in the moments that you need a little extra energy. So thank you for giving us this opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Kaylee, anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think that's it. I think we'll follow up with everybody and make sure that we provide additional information and links back to TULA so that you can explore it. If this is something that you would find valuable in your second shift in your life, then absolutely check out TULA.
Thank you guys.
thank you.
All the best. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.